6th Avenue, Midtown. Be there.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. The leftist utopia that is Europe. Love them, especially this time of year. They're doing great, especially when Greece is on fire. Who would have seen that coming? The communists are out rioting in the street again. Workers from the communist labor movement joined the strikes in Athens, calling for an end to austerity measures. Gang, this isn't going to end well for Europe, and it isn't going to end well for us if we don't realize we're being played. It's the third major protest this year, and things haven't been going well. Standard & Poor's recently downgraded Greece to 8 notches below junk status. Now, I'm not an economist, but I am a thinker. I'm going to go out on a limb and say any notches under below junk status, not a good thing for a country. They are now the lowest rated country in the world on the scale used by Standard & Poor's, and I'm not sure if Zimbabwe is on that scale. But that's not good. It's not good. In fact, it's so bad that even the philanthropist George Soros came out and said this: time is working against the Eurozone, and the chances of resolving the debt crisis are dwindling with each passing day. Oh, man. You know, it's really spooky. A spooky dude usually comes out and says stuff like that, and it usually triggers the final collapse. But I'm sure he's not involved in this one at all. Greece's woes are having a ripple effect. Moody's placed France, now their top 3 banks, on review for a possible downgrade, citing the bank's exposure to Greece's debt crisis. Gee, I wonder who's not exposed by Greece and their collapse. And the dominoes begin to sway. The U.S. stocks tumbled this afternoon. Apparently, investors aren't a real big fan of countries defaulting and riots in the street, too. The Dow Jones sank 173 points, wiping out an entire week's of gain. But president's in Puerto Rico. Want to shoot some hoops. And he's also on the case. Do you see the interview he did on NBC? He actually said that the real culprit behind our flailing economy are things like, and I'm quoting, ATM machines and technology. Because you're getting rid of the tellers, so we're not replacing the jobs. ATM machines. I had never heard of these newfangled automated teller machines. Are they like robots out on the corners? Hey, how much cash would you like? That's really? Darn, I hate all this new technology. You know, and businesses making things more efficient. We got to stop that or something. Really sure. Yes. Hello, America. 12 more programs. 12 more programs. At the end of this one, 11 more episodes of this program on Fox. We're trying to use the time as wisely as possible. I'm trying to warn people what is coming and trying to get people to prepare before, quite honestly, I go build my own ark. You know what I'm saying? People called Noah crazy, too. Mm-hmm. At some point, he said, I got to stop telling you about it. I start hammering nails into an ark. There are people that want to transform America and the globe into something that it is not. They are going to, as I said, push the problems that we have as a country and push them up into the globe. It will not work. The best thing we can do is link arms together, neighbor to neighbor. Reach out to our houses of worship and our community centers and take care of each other, as I believe God intended us to, and I know the founders intended us to do. The sooner more people wise up, the better chance we have to stop it in its tracks or at least survive with the least amount of damage. A growing number of people are, unfortunately, however, latching onto these globalist ideas. Yes, because I tell you something, it doesn't work on a national scale. Let's kick it up to the globe. because that'll be so much better, won't it? No, nothing really new, but it's picking up steam and it's building momentum in certain circles. The worst part is you may not even be aware of it, but groundwork is being laid. One of the main reasons for these same old tired ideas being revitalized is because those pushing globalism and government control on a global level have mastered the art of hiding it in plain sight and then just dismissing it as a joke. A great example would be this: the United Nations Earth Summit, Agenda 21. Yeah, that kind of sounds like Fahrenheit 451. I don't think that ended well. Agenda 21. They refer to it as sustainable development. Well, that sounds good. Gee, Wally, that sure sounds great to me. I mean, who's against development, especially the sustainable kind? Yeah. Yeah, you might change your mind when you hear a little bit of the background of sustainable development. Here's how Agenda 21 is defined by the United Nations. A comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which humans impact the environment. Wow, that's kind of broad. Now, it has been adopted by more than 178 governments. I believe there's only 191 on the planet. The United Nations had their big conference on the environment and development in Rio back in 1992, and that's when everybody jumped on board. But it sounds harmless. It's only Agenda 21. Yeah, go look this one up, because it's not so harmless. And it really, can I tell you something? You have to dig pretty deep into this thing. I mean, because look at all this. It doesn't get spooky until about here. Just section 1. Social and economic dimensions, which talks about the redistribution of wealth, changing consumption patterns, promoting health, I love this one, change population, and sustainable settlement. That's good. Then a little later, when it talks about the redistribution of wealth, which we all love, quote, developed countries and funding agencies should provide specific assistance to developing countries in adopting an enabling approach to the provision of shelter for all. So that's like guaranteed housing. Well, that's going to be great because the government's going to own all of our houses anyway because we're all going broke because of this. Reading through the pages, it becomes clear sustainable development is just a really nice way of saying centralized control over all of human life on planet Earth. That doesn't sound bad. It starts to make more sense when you see who's responsible for all of this. First, Gro Harlem Brundtland. I love her. I don't really know how to say her name because I don't know anybody who names their child with the first name G-R-O, Gro. But here she is, strong like bull. She happens to be the first vice president of Socialist International, which I read in Newsweek, we're all socialists now, just like Gro. Totally unrelated to her work at the UN is her socialist work, I'm sure. She's also really close friends with the Clintons. Oh, they get along so great. Where is she? Oh, there she is. Yoo-hoo! Right here. There she is. She's also active in the Clintons' Global Initiative. She's there for the annual meetings. Yeah. She was there when Hillary received a German Media Award in 2005. And here's Hillary wishing her dear friend happy 70th birthday. Watch. Here she is.
As a former environment minister, a longtime advocate for sustainable development, and most recently as a United Nations Special Envoy for Climate Change. You helped set the stage for intensive diplomatic and scientific work being done on this issue today.
Yada, yada, yada. Okay. Gro wasn't just there. Come on, she's being modest here. Gro wasn't just there. She coined the term sustainable development in a 1987 missive entitled Our Common Future. That was a piece that laid the groundwork for that's 92 Earth Summit, which, by the way, the 92 Earth Summit, the conference, you know who else was there? This guy. I love this guy. Love you, Maurice. Thank heaven for little girls. Wrong, Maurice. This is Maurice Strong. You might remember him from Crime, Inc. Remember that? Yeah. He's a globalist. He was formerly of the UN. He was on the board of the Chicago Climate Exchange scam. He also has this crazy idea. He wants to have people, if you want to have a baby, you know how that works, right? Because I'm not going to tell you, but, I mean, it's pretty simple. Okay. He wants to make sure if you want to have a baby, you have to have a license. He also said the only way to save the world at this point is to have the industrial civilization collapse. So what could be nefarious about what's happening with India? What? It's about helping the planet. All right, so that's how Agenda 21 came to be. Strongly reaffirmed at the World Summit on Sustainable Development held in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2002. Why is Glenn Beck talking about Agenda 21? How does this matter to you? Well, there is a good chance now your local community officials are actively working on implementing this socialist-created redistribution of wealth, globalist scheme disguised, really poorly, as environmental crusades. And here's how they're doing it. Through this organization. It's ICLEI. ICLEI. Local Governments for Sustainability. It was launched in 1990 with only a handful of participating governments. Today, over 1,200 local governments are involved. Here's what they do. Anytime you're coming up, your town is coming up with some sort of new zoning or an open space, or they want to have the smart energy meters, anything environmental, park, you must look for the buzzword like sustainable development, because there is a good chance that the people behind it at the local level may or may not have any idea, but the good chance is that the usual suspects are involved just behind the curtain. Let's look who's supporting and partnering with ICLEI. We have, oh, spooky dude, is that you? Of course it is me. Everything ends spooky and starts spooky. That's why we call him Spooky Dude. His Open Society Institute funds ICLEI and supports local Agenda 21. In fact, OSI has awarded a grant of more than $2 million in the past. Another ICLEI partner is Green for All. Green for All? How do we know Green for All? Well, if you know and love this crazy cat, Van Jones, you know, the communist revolutionary calling for the overthrow of the government, cleaned himself up, got in bed with this guy, and then found himself in the White House. That's how you know Green for All. He recently said at a joint event with ICLEI, our green future will be invented at the local level. Around the country, we are witnessing cities and mayors taking the lead and developing locally tailored action plans for fighting pollution and poverty at the same time. Remember, green is red. Another ICLEI founding sponsor, you're gonna be so surprised because you've never heard of these guys before, the Apollo Alliance. You know the Apollo Alliance? Part of the Tides Foundation? The Apollo Alliance, the ones that gave us the stimulus bill. Yeah, that didn't really stimulate anything at all. Oh, okay, progressive causes, it's stimulating that. Yeah, wasted your money. But anyway, the chairman of the Apollo Alliance is Phil Angelides. He spoke at the ICLEI event and he said, quote, our dependence on oil is causing economic instability, warming of the Earth's temperature, and threatening our national security. Cities are at the forefront of the movement to forge a new economic strategy that is focused on developing clean energy sources of energy and millions of family-supporting jobs. If any of those family-supporting jobs would have worked, we would have done them because they tried to do them in Spain. It didn't work. I wish, truly, I wish this was about the globe. It is not. And of course, as we're looking at this board, no Crime, Inc., family would really be complete without the Center for American Progress, which he's involved in this one, and this one, and this one. Yeah, there it is. They're partner too. their partner too. Quote, solving global warming means investing in new infrastructure and building strong communities and creating good jobs. Local governments are leading the nation into shifting to low-carbon economy today in the face of federal inaction. So the feds didn't do it, so that's why they're using the United Nations, and they're using your hapless mayor or city council. Most will have no clue as to what this really is. Those who do will say, oh, that's crazy talk. By the way, Center for American Progress receives money from the Tides Foundation as well. Guess who else Tide supports? These guys. But it doesn't stop there. No other supporters include this lady. Remember her? Annie Leonard. You know, the story of Stuff Lady. Oh, she's great. And she loves capitalism. She loves a republic. She loves our founders. Gang, whenever you start unraveling this, it's like an onion. You just start peeling the layers off, and it's always down to the same seed. It is, always. This is a massive movement, and its real intentions are being masked with environmental issues. The bad news is this structure was set up by those who want to establish a global government system. They've set this structure up years ago. This is why I keep saying to you, you don't have any idea how far behind we really are. But here's the good news. God is not uninvolved in man's freedom. We haven't been looking in his way for a very, very long time. We've screwed our country up. We've screwed up our lives, etc., etc. But he's not uninvolved in man's freedom, because man's freedom is going to be used for his purposes. I have no idea. I don't think it's building bigger houses or casinos, but I don't know what it is. But we have to be free. Man has to be free. The only reason we found out about this is because there are citizens paying attention to what is going on in their own local communities. We have been paying attention to Washington. We must stand guard on our own communities. Some people now have begun questioning and standing up to what on the surface seems like a harmless initiative just to save the environment. But it is not. Be awake. Spread the word. Watch your local community. The answer will be found with the individual. The answers and the solutions will be found in the local communities. But once they put their fangs into our communities, they'll suck all the blood out of it, and we will not be able to survive. Watch out. I told you before, and boy was I hammered for this. I know now why. When I first warned you about a year and a half ago, watch the words social justice. It's like I said last night, Princess Bride. You keep using those words. I do not think it means what you think it means. They don't. Social justice. A lot of people interpret that in, it's what God wants me to do. Yes. But God wants you to render to Caesar that which is Caesar's. Jesus never said, take the coat off of your back and then give it to the government and have him divide it up and give it to other people. No, that's for us to do. Look for the buzzwords social justice and look for the buzzwords sustainable development. Some people involved may actually have a pure heart and believe in it the way you do. Most do not. Those who want more government controls are never going to come out and say it. They've got to trick you into it. But the more you follow the usual suspects, the more you'll recognize their hallmarks, and the more you can ring the bell and protect your own community. Back in a minute. Well, the results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress is in, and they are really good. I mean, if you define really good by really scary and pathetic. I'm not sure where the breakdown is, but I think it's time to say, doesn't matter. It's a major breakdown. Start from scratch. Are you ready? Only 20% of fourth graders performed at or above the proficient level for eighth graders, or for fourth graders. Eighth graders, it's even worse. Only 17% at or above the proficient level. And for 12th graders, 12%. A country cannot survive. It cannot survive if we allow this to happen. Michelle Obama said Barack was going to change our traditions and history, and as crazy as that sounds, that ain't that difficult because no one knows it. If you don't know American history, how are you going to save the country? Why is it even worth saving? It's open game to anybody who wants to alter it. Don't think this is a coincidence. Let's look at a couple of the questions. I put one up on the chalkboard here. You tell me. Can you answer? This is for fourth grade. Write the letter each event listed below, correct square on the timeline. Jamestown, the year Jamestown was founded. That would be A. The United States Constitution was written. That would be B, 1787. Christopher Columbus sails to America. That would be C. Abraham Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation. I don't know. This one's already taken. Hello? Here's another one for fourth graders. What is the purpose of the Declaration of Independence? Remember, these are ones they didn't get. It explained how the new government of the United States would work. No. It explained why the colonies would no longer let England control them. It gave all men and women in the colonies a right to vote. It organized all the people in the colonies into one religion. No. I think that's SEIU. It's this one. B. Only 35% of fourth graders got this right. Next question for fourth graders. 1787 Constitutional Convention. Northern and Southern delegates debated whether or not slaves would be counted as part of the state's population. Disagreements over this question led to bitter tensions among delegates. To resolve the question, they referred to in the passage delegates agreed to: A, include all male slaves in population totals, include no slaves in population totals, count each slaves as 3/5 of a person in population totals, or count slaves in the southern states but not in the northern states. The answer is 3/5, but no one will teach the reason why. That was to help free slaves. 59% of eighth graders got this one correct. But if you ask them why, I can guarantee you 58% have no idea. 12th grade question. During the Korean War, United Nations forces made largely up of troops of the United States and South Korea fought against troops from North Korea and what? Correct answer, China. Only 22% of 12th graders got that question right. America, the less we know and the less we teach our children, the more power we give to those who wish to challenge and change our lives, control our lives, destroy the Constitution and man's freedom. A lawyer does not go into a defense not knowing any of the facts of the case. How can we go into the trial of the Constitution and freedom without any of the facts? American history is on trial. Do we have the facts? If we fail to teach ourselves and fail to teach our children, we fail our founders, we fail our Constitution, we fail our God. Know your history. Tomorrow we're going to do a show all on history. Know the reasons why America became great. And since for whatever reason it's not happening in our schools and not being taught, you have to step up. You have to be able to make the argument, but make the original argument. Go to glennbeck.com right now and get started. Look for the original argument. I've told you that I'm leaving this program in 12 episodes, 11 and a half episodes now. And it's because I am not going to talk about the problems every day. I'm going to start presenting solutions. And that's not what this network does. They make sure you understand the problem and bring you the news. I need to roll up my sleeves and get involved because I'm a citizen just like you. Well, one of the things that we've tried to do on this program is show you history. Like I told you, tomorrow we are going to do a program all on history. And I just told you a minute ago that kids, they don't know our history now. And some will say, oh, what difference does it make? So why is it important to know history? Well, because there's nothing new under the sun. One of the reasons why we have such a good track record on predicting the future is because we know history on this program. It repeats itself. There is no problem that we're facing today that humanity hasn't faced in the past. Well, except maybe the fact that my kid won't stop playing Angry Birds. Technology changes. But the basic issues that we are facing now as humans, we have always faced. It's a cycle. Man falls asleep. He gets greedy. It brings repercussions. Then, freedom is taken away. He falls into slavery. He wakes up, works hard, fixes it, finds God, and the process begins all over again. It's the same story over and over. Our founders were not just wig-wearing candle makers with big, long pipes. Okay, I don't think that was one of our founders, but they were the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates of their day. Several of them were brilliant innovators. But combined with that, they were also political visionaries who studied history. They didn't just come up with this system. They looked at history and the patterns of man. I've shown you tonight that revolutionaries, and they are rioting in the streets of Greece, and they are also headed here. Our founders saw that problem, and they wrote about it in something called the Federalist Papers. But if you've ever read the Federalist Papers, they're impossible to read. When you read it, they sound like an old dusty document with some old dude in a how's he moving? Some old dude in a wig that would say something like this.
Among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction, the friend of popular governments.
Do you have any idea what he just said?
Of course they do, Glenn. I put it so succinctly.
Right. You can't get through this. You can't. So you have to be able to read it and then put it into today's language. And basically what they were saying, I don't think he was, but what they were saying was, violence always comes.
That's what I just said. Thank you.
Pipe down. Even to the most well put together of nations. But it's inevitable that from time to time, special interest groups will become so passionate over some issue, they'll all unite, and they will go against the rights of the rest of the citizens, or even go against the good of the nation. And violence is the enemy of popular government.
I think I've heard you say that on this very program, which I've watched often.
Why is he still... I don't know why he's still talking. Our founders knew that the aim of these factions would be able to create an outcry from the people, to have the government stop the violence. However, you going to arrest them? Are you going to remove their liberties altogether?
Surely not.
All right. Are you going to use social justice so people have equal access, ideas, and opportunities?
Good heavens, I hope not.
Actually, these guys in the wigs actually did address social justice, right?
Exactly. Yes,
right.
We did. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But not the way you think.
Trouble that.
Pardon me?
Trouble that.
What does trouble that mean?
That is trouble. Trouble.
See, you can't understand what they're saying because they're wearing white wigs and smoking pipes. The idea that social justice was addressed by these guys is pretty amazing. Believe me, I know that sent a frenzy over at Media Matters. So what do? Do we see anybody uniting over a common passion? Well, we just saw that, a huge dose of it in Wisconsin, labor protest. We see it with SEIU organizing against the banks. The banks that received bailouts because we didn't listen to our founders. And now people think the banks are greedy and they're not paying their fair share. Yes. Some are. Some are not. But violence, it's coming to America if we don't pay attention. So far, we've been mostly fortunate here, but Europe is ahead of us on this. using violence to promote a common passion. Today's riots in Greece show exactly what could be coming our way. Don't go anywhere, because
I shan't.
Don't go anywhere, because I'll show you exactly how this guy, not this guy, solved the problem. Next. Look a little bit at one of the solutions, and the solution is to educate ourselves. We've been talking about the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers is a book that hardly anybody even reads anymore, and it should be. It is the original argument. It is the argument that the founders made to convince the American people that they should have a constitution. With all of the things that are going on, and you read the Federalist Papers, if you read at number 10, something that was written 224 years ago, it could have been written this morning. Now, how did that happen? Did James Madison just get lucky on that one? Look at Federalist Paper at number 10. I'll translate. Here's James Madison's words.
Theoretic politicians who have patronized this species of government have erroneously supposed that by reducing mankind to a perfect equality in their political rights, they would, at the same time, be perfectly equalized and assimilated in their possessions, their opinions, and their passions.
Right. I would have to read that like 4 times, and it goes on. He's just like this. The Federalist Papers. What is he saying there? The founders believed that the people, all people, have different abilities and ambitions, and there's no guarantee of equality of outcome. It means...
Quite right.
It means that things are going to look different for each of us. It doesn't mean that everybody's checkbook looks the same in the end.
Well, of course not. We didn't even have checkbooks in my day.
What did you have?
ATMs.
It means that your house may be bigger or smaller than mine, depending on how hard you work.
I'm guessing smaller.
Your education level and your ambition and your goals. We're going to have different houses. We're going to drive different cars. Your wife's ring is not going to be the same as the other guy's wife's ring. It also doesn't mean that you have a right to health care or even higher education. This country was built on a foundation of treating everyone equally and giving everyone equal opportunities, not guaranteeing equal outcomes. It was, quite honestly, it was based on this.
Where's he going? I hate it when he gets up and starts prancing about like that.
Based on this. This is George Washington's original. This is the original Purple Heart. The merit badge. It was based on merit. You have to be a person of merit. You have to do something. You have to earn it. But you also have to have an opportunity to be a person of merit. Today, with our various programs, our regulations, our tax policies, the government is trying to redistribute the wealth and keep people from failing. They're going to fail. I have a right to fail. Quite honestly, it is in my failing that I found my salvation. It is an effort to make everyone equal in their possessions, and it is wrong. We see it with Obamacare. We see it, watch this, from the president in higher taxes for the wealthy.
As a country that values fairness, wealthier individuals have traditionally borne a greater share of this burden than the middle class or those less fortunate.
Okay. As usual, the president sets out a false premise and expects you to buy in. He says traditionally. When did that start? It started under Woodrow Wilson. It's a progressive income tax. There's nothing in the Constitution that sets a standard for the rich to bear a greater burden. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Equal protection, equal justice, not social justice. Now, the reason why this system gets cold-hearted is because we have strayed away from the path of being people of decency and merit. We have strayed so far from the original intent and what kind of people that we were supposed to be. We are so far away from the original intent and the original argument that last week J.P. Morgan Chase, the head, Jamie Dimon, asked Fed Chair Ben Bernanke whether we're preventing our economy from even growing at this point. Watch.
Now we're told there are going to be even higher capital requirements, so-called SIFI charges and G-SIFI charges, et cetera, and we know there are 300 rules coming. Has anyone bothered to study the cumulative effect of all these things? And do you have a fear, like I do, that when we look back and look at them all, that they will be a reason that it took so long that our banks, our credit, our businesses, and most importantly, job creation start going again? Is this holding us back at this point?
I don't think Ben Bernanke understood it. Let me show you one more example from Federalist Paper number 10. Madison wrote this.
Complaints are everywhere heard from our most considerate and virtuous citizens, equally the friends of public and private faith, and of public and personal liberty, that our governments are too unstable, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties, and that measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minor party, but the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority.
I didn't get a word of that, did you? Let me translate. While the American Constitution makes many valuable and admirable improvements on both the ancient and modern models of popular government, a republic, a democracy, it would be untrue and unfair to claim that under the Constitution that it would prevent these dangers as well as might be hoped or expected. An even greater danger for us today than an overbearing majority is the superior force of an interested and overbearing minority. Do you think we have one? Did you see how many people agree with the policies of our country? What's happening? So what's the remedy? Well, Washington talked, and all of them talked about a moral and virtuous people who are wide awake enough to realize that we have gone wrong in our own life and our country, and we have strayed from the Constitution. As great as it is, the Constitution cannot run on autopilot. We must be involved. Get all of the details of the original argument for the Constitution at glennbeck.com. Thank you. America, we have a deadline hanging over our head, and it's August 2nd. That is the day that the country hits the debt limit, the debt ceiling of $14 trillion. So, how do we solve our spending problem? As if we had one. There's a new idea. The U.S. Postal Service could be the answer. It's a union leader that has this idea. To alleviate the post office $8.5 billion deficit, he says, let's not cut Saturday delivery. Because that would impact 80,000 jobs and save $3 billion. That's not enough. He says, the president of the National Association of Letter Carriers, that we should consider a new idea, like conducting the census 10 years down the road, or national polling, or delivering medications, or helping law enforcement in a number of ways. Ooh. If we could give them a badge and a gun, wouldn't that be great? Specifically, he suggested adding sensors to the postal trucks to detect biological terror threats. That sounds cheap. He says, quote, they can work with Homeland Security to detect things that are in the air. Wow, that is awesome. If we could just give our postal workers AK-47, wouldn't that be great? Give them handguns, a badge, some metal detector thing, and they can sniff out the mail and everything. The mailmen can fight crime. They can stop terrorists. We could maybe get rid of our firefighters, too, because they could fight fires. They're in the neighborhood. Why don't we have them pick up our garbage, too? We wouldn't need garbagemen, firemen, police, nothing. We'll just make them members of Homeland Security, because after all, they're already out on the streets. They see everything. All these people are losing their jobs. The mail carriers would be a force of 200,000. Think about it. 100 cities cutting cops because they can't afford it. But now we make the letter carriers, Department of Homeland Security officials, 200,000 sets of eyes. It'd be like having It'd be like having a civilian force that would be just as powerful, just as strong, and just as well funded as the military.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
We should think about that. Yeah, we should think about that. Tomorrow, all the history you asked for, answering your history questions, because there's only now 11 episodes left, and we wanted to check back in with David Barton and some of your favorites back here live. You'll walk away knowing more than 88% of all the 12th graders that can't pass history in America. We'll see you then from New York. Good night, America. Sounds great to me. I mean, who's against development, especially the sustainable kind? Yeah. Yeah, you might change your mind when you hear a little bit of the background of sustainable development. Here's how Agenda 21 is defined by the United Nations. A comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which humans impact the environment. Wow, that's kind of broad. Now, it has been adopted by more than 178 governments. I believe there's only 191 on the planet. The United Nations had their big conference on the environment and development in Rio back in 1992, and that's when everybody jumped on board. But it sounds harmless. It's only Agenda 21. Yeah, go look this one up, because it's not so harmless. And it really, can I tell you something? You have to dig pretty deep into this thing. I mean, because look at all this. It doesn't get spooky until about here. Spooky is spooky, dude. Usually comes out and says stuff like that, and it usually triggers the final collapse. But I'm sure he's not involved in this one at all. Greece's woes are having a ripple effect. Moody's placed France, now their top 3 banks, on review for a possible downgrade, citing the bank's exposure to Greece's debt crisis. Gee, I wonder who's not exposed by Greece and their collapse. And the dominoes begin to sway. The U.S. stocks tumbled this afternoon. Apparently, investors aren't real big fan of countries defaulting, and riots in the street, too. The Dow Jones sank 173 points, wiping out an entire week's of gain. But president's in Puerto Rico. Want to shoot some hoops. And he's also on the case. Do you see the interview he did on NBC? He actually said that the real culprit behind our flailing economy are things like, and I'm quoting, ATM machines and technology. Because you're getting rid of the tellers, and so we're not replacing the jobs. ATM machines. I had never heard of these newfangled automated teller machines. Are they like robots out on the corners? Hey, how much cash would you like? That's really? Darn, I hate all this new technology. You know, and businesses making things more efficient. We got to stop that or something. Not really sure. Yes. Hello, America. 12 more programs. 12 more programs. At the end of this one, 11 more episodes of this program on Fox. We're trying to use the time as wisely as possible. I'm trying to warn people what is coming and trying to get people to prepare before, quite honestly, I go build my own ark. You know what I'm saying? People called Noah crazy, too. Mm-hmm. At some point, he said, I got to stop telling you about it. Start hammering nails into an ark. There are people that want to transform America and the globe into something that it is not. They are going to, as I said, push the problems that we have as a country and push them up into the globe. It will not work. The best thing we can do is link arms together, neighbor to neighbor. Reach out to our houses of worship and our community centers and take care of each other, as I believe God intended us to, and I know the
6th Avenue, Midtown. Be there.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. The leftist utopia that is Europe. Love them, especially this time of year. They're doing great, especially when Greece is on fire. Who would have seen that coming? The communists are out rioting in the street again. Workers from the communist labor movement joined the strikes in Athens, calling for an end to austerity measures. Gang, this isn't going to end well for Europe, and it isn't going to end well for us if we don't realize we're being played. It's the third major protest this year, and things haven't been going well. Standard & Poor's recently downgraded Greece to 8 notches below junk status. Now, I'm not an economist, but I am a thinker. I'm going to go out on a limb and say any notches under below junk status, not a good thing for a country. They are now the lowest rated country in the world on the scale used by Standard & Poor's, and I'm not sure if Zimbabwe is on that scale. But that's not good. It's not good. In fact, it's so bad that even the philanthropist George Soros came out and said this: time is working against the Eurozone, and the chances of resolving the debt crisis are dwindling with each passing day. Oh, man. You know, it's really founders intended us to do. The sooner more people wise up, the better chance we have to stop it in its tracks, or at least survive with the least amount of damage. A growing number of people are, unfortunately, however, latching onto these globalist ideas. Yes, because I tell you something, it doesn't work on a national scale. Let's kick it up to the globe, because that'll be so much better, won't it? No, nothing really new, but it's picking up steam and it's building momentum in certain circles. The worst part is you may not even be aware of it, but groundwork is being laid. One of the main reasons for these same old tired ideas being revitalized is because those pushing globalism and government control on a global level have mastered the art of hiding it in plain sight and then just dismissing it as a joke. A great example would be this: the United Nations Earth Summit, Agenda 21. Yeah, that kind of sounds like Fahrenheit 451. I don't think that ended well. Agenda 21. They refer to it as sustainable development. Well, that sounds good. Gee, Wally, I'm sure